always say that I'm going to talk to somebody's brain. That's the exact phrase I use because I don't know how
Mhm.
else to say it. But
Yeah.
you can talk to different pieces of person.
Yes, you
There's
can.
different personalities to talk
Yeah.
to. There's
Mhm.
different parts of their mind, their spirit, their soul, their alters, their past lives, their future. There is so much to talk to, and it's not just one piece. Because when
Mhm.
I looked inside the mind, it was so complex. People think that you're thinking externally when you're talking about the matrix. But when I looked inside a person, I looked inside myself, I saw the matrix within myself. It was individual based. That thing was individual based where I saw all the lines everywhere, the boxes. There's so many secret things and things to unlock inside the mind. It's the most complex thing. I mean, you're literally a universe in a world within yourself.
Mm. And you came in for this. I mean, as you're speaking, I feel like, I mean, or do we, like, this is my question, and we'll get into I want to get into the nuts and bolts and of your story,
Hmm.
but do you feel like this is part of the soul plan for you? Like, because you
Yes.
have a unique gift and you're able to go where, and myself in maybe a slightly different way, go into these dark areas and kind of clean them up, air them out, bring light to the collective, help all this heal. Like, that's the soul plan I see for Olivia. You agree with
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Starseeds Speak. I am really happy to have with me a new guest in the studio. This is Olivia James, who has quite an incredible story and has been really devoted to getting back to the essence of what happened to her over these past few years. Yeah, Olivia, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read the so people, maybe who aren't familiar with your story, a little bit of the soundbite. Um, Condensed in just a massive story condensed into just a few paragraphs here.
Hmm.
Olivia was born into the programs by a family of drug traffickers, trauma trained in the programs like MK Ultra, where her mind was split to create alters used for missions on Earth and in space. She was used for espionage, occult, beta, and corporate programs. And now Olivia's main focus is finding her memories, using them to heal her alters, and hoping that her memories can assist others. Um, I love that. So you've been through a
Yeah, thank
lot, and
you.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you're here. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to your story. So I'm wondering, the first question I had was, when did you understand that there was something amiss in your journey? Like, when did the
Oh
bleed
gosh,
start happening?
it was
Yeah,
very distinct. It was
yeah.
very distinct. And I remember exactly like the day, everything. It's because I actually got a new job here. I got a new job. And you wouldn't, and it's kind of like office human resources type work. So you wouldn't assume that I would get any type of feeling from that. But as soon as I started working in this job, I was constantly having panic attacks and anxiety and just weird things. Paranormal instances increased. Everything that I, I mean, I was so out of sorts with everything. I knew something was wrong. I knew it, and I could not put my finger on what was wrong. Why do I feel like this? Why am I acting like this? Why am I lashing out? I was lashing out at people at work, like ter almost like I was afraid, but not sure what I was afraid of. It was really interesting to me. And I had this something like inside me was just it's like I can't even it's so hard to explain. I remember one day I was walking outside and I was going through all this and I was trying to clear my head and I almost felt like I could feel people walking with me and I could almost not hear them, but I felt like messages. And I had never experienced that. From what I can remember, it was coming more to the forefront of my memory. And something inside me said, you need to do like a regression, like immediately. And
Mhm.
and I was having a lot of other like emotional issues. Was having some issues with sexual addiction and things like that. And I needed to help somehow, and I knew I needed to change. And that's when I decided to do like my very first hypnotic regression. Had never done it, didn't know anything about it, didn't know what would happen. I thought I was doing something for my emotional state, you know. But
Yeah.
when I went under, I didn't even know I could go under. And it was so intense and it lasted for almost 6 hours. That's a very long time to be
That's a
under
huge amount of time. Yeah, right.
deep. And I was under deep, deep hypnosis, like to the point where like I barely even felt my throat anymore. It was so deep. Like it's really strange to be under that deep. And what I was surprised about is so many things were coming through me, speaking out. Like it was almost like a movie. I couldn't even believe it. And I was saying things that I couldn't believe it. Like, why am I saying this? Why did I say that? And I had to listen to it so many times. And then I just knew then it's the very first thing that I heard myself say is the hypnotist asked me, she said, why is there a wall to your memory? What's there? And in my own voice, I said, it's memory suppression technology, intelligence-based memory suppression technology. And why would I say that? I don't know anything about that kind of thing. So that was my first time of being into it. And after that happened, it just kind of it just came at me so hard. I was having memories, things were just flowing, like I was getting so much information, things that I should not know about, military codes, people's names, names of places. It was just so much. It really um I had a lot of anxiety because it was so much. And I'm trying to live a normal life, but then now I'm having memories
Yeah,
of doing
forget it.
things and being people, and I'm supposed to be this professional person, and I was
Mm.
having all these problems, and I was already embarrassed at, how I was behaving at work because I didn't know myself to be, irrational or, unprofessional or, any type of decreased work performance, anything like that. So it really affected me that I couldn't perform to my best ability. But now I know why. Like it took me a long time, and I've done so many regressions now. It's actually one of my favorite things to do now, and I've gotten to the past the point where it's a regression because I use my psychic ability, through this process that I call psi remote viewing, hosting, astral travel by location. I've combined it all to where I can, what I usually call voluntary possession.
Yeah.
So when I'm under deep enough, I'm allowing things to not just speak through me. I'm not just, channeling. I'm not a channeler. So I'm actually letting this thing take over my body. It's seeing through my eyes. I'm seeing through its eyes. We're the same person, I see their memories. They see mine. And it's so intense. It's like it's no other feeling in the world to me. So, I've done it so many times now. So I've kind of graduated from actual like hypnotic regression to actually using my ability to obtain information. And that's kind of my main goal. I keep working on this to get more information. And now I've gotten kind of where I'm helping myself become more advanced by practicing, where I'm able to go into, look at secret documents. I'm able to, talk to handlers. I let handlers speak through me, which is, I know it's scary, but it's so important to get this information straight from the people who are doing this to us. And when I do it, and I've had witnesses to it, and some take it well, some don't. But they're I let the thing speak through me like with its own voice, and it doesn't speak nicely. When a handler comes forward, it's not saying hello, nice to meet you. It's swearing and cussing, get out of here, you're full of crap. It just that's how it goes. They're not here to be nice to us. So I
Yeah.
think it's very important to get the information straight from the source instead of, I wonder what they would say or I wonder what's in this document. I don't need to wonder. I'm going to go look for it and bring the information back to everyone so they know exactly what's happening. If I see something dark, I'll make sure people know and I'll, either put it in one of my books, I'll make some type of information, I'll talk about it on a podcast. So there's no reason to hide it. People can see the truth right for what it is, no matter how dark it is. And that's definitely what I consider myself. I kind of work in the shadows. Everything I do is more shadow work. It's very much, steeped in shadow. I'm not doing love and light type of work. Yes, what I'm using is for good, but I take the kind of like the darker approach, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Don't try voluntary possession because it's something that I personally can do based on my psychic ability. Because when I let it happen, or if I let an entity speak through me, I don't get harmed physically, or psychologically. So I'm totally fine. I wouldn't want anybody
Yeah,
else to
and
try it.
as you're speaking, it occurs to me too that you're using the what you were kind of groomed for in the programs for
Yes.
the benefit of your life and everyone else right now. So isn't that a win-win? Like
I
that's a
think so. I think so. And I just wanted to say I completely understand when people, if they hear me speak or they read something I've written or something about, my work with dark entities or, the demonic realm, I completely understand their feeling in terms of their perspective on how they would view it. I understand, with me personally, I'm not religious, so I may have taken a different approach to it. And let me tell you, once I learned how to do this and realized that there is nothing to fear, the fear falls away and they have less to control us with. If I'm not afraid of this, from religious programming or something else, what can they control me with if they say they try to scare you, these entities are going to come and possess you and take. I'm already doing that. So what's next? What can you scare me with next? So I'm not afraid of that. So it's been so interesting to see how the fear drops away and how much they did control me with it because I was afraid my whole life of not just everything around me, afraid of the dark, everything. I was afraid of myself.
When I heard,
Everything to,
I was
yeah,
listening to a podcast you did a few with Typical Skeptic over there with Rob, and something poignant that stood out was I think you said something along those lines of like, all my life I was really living in fear and fear and fear, and I realized I was afraid of myself.
it was. It
Potent.
was. It was the thing that was, when you think about a horror movie or something, the dark and the shadows in the dark, the thing in the dark, the creeping thing coming towards me, the shadow in the room, it was me. It was my survival altar that was there. I was afraid of myself this entire time. I always saw her as like a possessed child, somebody very dark and evil that had haunted me my whole life. And now I realize it was my survival altar showing me that there was threats in my immediate environment. She was appearing to me in that way. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I'm like, because some of us are always, these altars are trying to take control of us. They're trying to, harm me. They're trying to take over. What I found in my work, and this is just for me and my experience, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but at the end of the day, all of these altars, when I asked them to, they rallied to me. I asked them to retire themselves. They agreed and they went to sleep
Hmm.
with me as the main focus, the main person in the front, as the controller of everything. It was me, my front personality said, it's time for you all to go to sleep, go into retirement. Your work is done. It's time for me to take over and live my life. And it's been a very long process of trying to meet myself because from what they did to us, I was never able to use my real personality, myself. I didn't know who that was. So it's a lot of, I had a huge personality change when this happens. I completely different. And so I would understand, that can affect, intimate relationships, relationships with friends. It's because I'm not the same person. And it's because they took that from me. They stole that from me. My original
Yeah.
experience, what I was supposed to be, they took it from me. So now I have to go back at this age, and try to re-find who I was supposed to be and find myself.
Yeah, and I mean, how empowering, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I found that too with going back and going through the whole, like, for example, the Bringing Light to the Darkness series on this channel that I created was so I was terrified to kind of bring this forward, but when I did, and over the years since, it's like I've revamped my whole life for the better. So I hear you very much, and
Yeah.
that's
Isn't it strange? Yeah, because
yeah,
people would think that you're getting information from demons, but I'm like, man, they give me good information
they
and
give you good
it's
information.
helped so many people. It's like it's hard for me to see it as such an evil, dark thing when they've literally given me a lot of information that has helped us figure out who these people are, what they've done, projects, everything. They have the same sight as a lot of us do.
Yeah.
You ask them, use your all-knowing sight to show me something, tell me something. If you're that strong, show me. And they do. They come through every time, which is really strange. I would think they're more reliable than sometimes humans, in terms of information. It's very strange. It's very conflicting. I guess I would say that it's conflicting because I still, I was raised religious as a child, but I'm not now, but that still kind of lingers sometimes when I first experienced it, I thought, oh, this is evil. I shouldn't be doing this. This is evil. And now I'm like, now that I've, talked to so many of them, the experience is so different because my ability, I can talk to I mean, I only talk say it like this because this is the words I use. You know, when I'm connected to my highest self during these sessions, I always say that I'm going to talk to somebody's brain. That's the exact phrase I use because I don't know how
Mhm.
else to say it. But
Yeah.
you can talk to different pieces of person.
Yes, you
There's
can.
different personalities to talk
Yeah.
to. There's
Mhm.
different parts of their mind, their spirit, their soul, their alters, their past lives, their future. There is so much to talk to, and it's not just one piece. Because when
Mhm.
I looked inside the mind, it was so complex. People think that you're thinking externally when you're talking about the matrix. But when I looked inside a person, I looked inside myself, I saw the matrix within myself. It was individual based. That thing was individual based, where I saw all the lines everywhere, the boxes. There's so many secret things and things to unlock inside the mind. It's the most complex thing. I mean, you're literally a universe in a world within yourself.
Mm. And you came in for this. I mean, as you're speaking, I feel like, I mean, or do we, like, this is my question, and we'll get into I want to get into the nuts and bolts and of your story,
Mhm.
but do you feel like this is part of the soul plan for you? Like, because you
Yes.
have a unique gift and you're able to go where, and myself in maybe a slightly different way, go into these dark areas and kind of clean them up, air them out, bring light to the collective, help all this heal. Like, that's the soul plan I see for Olivia. You agree with
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I was meant to show people the nature of duality because that's me. I'm a walking duality myself, being,
Yeah.
something dark from the past. I was something dark and I'm what I am now. So for me, it's definitely that experience of duality within myself that I want to show to people that the world is more than, what we think it is. And I've seen it with myself. I've experienced it, and I think other people could. And if we drop away some of the fear that we've been programmed around, I mean, things could be so much different in this world.
Yes, yes, well said. Thank you. So, well, and speaking of, okay, we're going to go back into, I just wanted to know,
Yes.
like, the early part of your, the family story with the drug trafficking. I feel
Hmm.
it's true that your dad was working for military intelligence back, was this in the
Yes.
60s maybe? And then,
60s. Yes.
yeah, and then he got tangled up with, tell us about how the drugs came into play.
Yeah. So my father, he was recruited really young. He was just a skinny kid from a small town. He got recruited very young for military intelligence. And which I think is strange. They usually don't recruit, poor kids from small towns for intelligence work. But he ended up working on the German-Russian border. He was code breaker, and he learned German really quickly, like in 6 months or something. It was really crazy. So very intelligent person, you know. So when he got out of that, he was doing got mixed up into drug trafficking, which I don't think was an accident, me personally. And I just wanted to let people know the reason I have so much information about this, in which, my mother's still alive, so she can give me part of the information because she participated, but she didn't know everything. And so the reason how I got so much information is because I let my father, who is passed now, I let him possess, almost like take over my body and give me all the information I needed. The biggest gift in my life was to let him come forward, from his realm and speak in his human voice. And in his human voice, he was very narcissistic, controlling, and just, he was, we had a very estranged relationship. I felt very unloved and that kind of thing. But when he came through me, he spoke in that voice. He didn't speak in his advanced spiritual voice that he is now. He said he brought that to me as a gift because I did need the truth. I didn't want to be sugar coated. Give me the truth about how you felt, why you did it. And he pretty much was a coward. He did it to save himself.
Mhm.
And he did think real in a session I did with him speaking through me, he said that I was disgusting. And it was so heartbreaking, but I needed that so bad because that really gave me closure of to why he separated himself from me so much because he thought I was disgusting because of what they did to me. He didn't want to look at me. He didn't want to be around me because he knew part of it was because of him. And it was the biggest gift I've ever gotten from him is just for him to use his human voice. And so I was going to go back and say the reason he got mixed up in this drug trafficking, if anybody wants to research about different agencies' involvement in drug trafficking in the 60s and 70s. Tons of research out there. It's very well known that it's
Yes,
not
it
just
is.
person. He
Yeah.
was working with they didn't call them cartels in the 60s, but they do now, but that's just kind of the word I use because that's the known word that people use. He started working for cartels and he flew a plane, he used a boat, car, bus. They did a lot by bus. And they got away with all of it. And they think that they got away with it just because no, there was agreements in place. You can even research that. There's agreements in place for a lot of buses to go back and forth so they didn't get caught because of different agency involvement.
Mm.
So what happened was they were making tons of money doing, making almost $50,000 a day, which is a lot for very young people. They were very young when they were doing this. And my mom was kind of like the launderer. She helped with that kind of thing. And she did some of the trafficking across the buses. But he ended up getting addicted to his own product. And they were upset that he was doing that because he started to mess up. He was missing drops and, missing meetings and things like that. So they decided to scare him a little. They were doing raids. So the first raid didn't take. He couldn't, obviously he had an addiction. He couldn't stop immediately. And then the second raid, they were just done with him. So they did a second raid, and this time they fully, took everything. They beat him up in the house, took everything that he had, took him to jail. And there was this huge public trial in our town. It was all in the newspapers and all the court documents, everything. And at the end, it was looking like he was going to go to prison for life. He just was because of, I mean, it was mountains of drugs. He wasn't just playing, he wasn't a small player. It was a
Mm.
lot of drugs. So he was going to prison for life. But at the end of the trial, they just let him go. They said we had the wrong person and they gave him a local government job.
Mm.
So they hired a known drug trafficker and heroin addict for this. So that's really interesting that they did that. But so he kind of skated out of that. And the reason why he got out of that, he told me, is because, well, I just want to make sure I want people to know his spirit told me that he signed me over in order to save himself. So,
Mhm.
and if he signed me over to this, he could go back to his life. He could have a life, and he took it. He took that deal, and he gave me to them. So that's when they took me into MK Ultra around 7 years old at a psychiatric hospital.
Okay. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that I've heard, I mean, this pertains to my own, family story with my father who was working with naval intelligence and the CIA and all these things. It's like you sign these papers over, so we have your child. So, and I mean, do you feel like when he said, I'm disgusted by you, was he maybe
Yeah,
saying, I'm fucking disgusted with myself?
I wish it was, but he was disgusted that he thought that what they were doing to me sexually as a child to
Yeah.
make me into what I was. He was disgusted by that because he said
Mhm.
so. Look at
Yeah.
you, look at your mother, look at you guys, disgusting. That literally we were disgusting. And it was heart wrenching, but I needed it, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it now. He's like
Yeah.
a guide to me now. Whenever I go under, and if I want to do a session, sometimes he's one of the first people I see, and he's not gonna. He knows when I need him. He comes. He knew that I needed him, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'll start doing a session and I'll start to count it down, and I already see him behind me, like, yeah, I got something to show you, or I got something to tell you. He's very, involved in what I'm doing now.
And do you welcome that? Does that feel
Yes, I do.
helpful?
I didn't I wouldn't have if I was who I was before, no. But now, yes, who I am now, getting back my real personality. Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely want him around. I definitely feel like he has my best interests at heart because he's not here anymore. He's in a
Right.
different realm. And he even
Totally.
told me, he said, the realm I'm in, I apologize, he said, but we don't have emotion here. There's no need for that. That's a human thing. I don't have that. I'm sorry. He even says, I'm sorry, but I don't have emotions anymore. Where I'm at, all I can feel is love. So I don't feel the pain, the suffering that you're feeling, in which I totally get it. I get it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a lot right there, isn't it? Well, so thank you.
Yeah.
Whenever our families, and I said this to Misha too when I had her on, whenever our families are deeply involved in what happens to us in the programs and us being vetted or dragged into the programs, abducted into them, I think it adds another layer of emotional complexity that can be hard to live through. Where were you taken? Do you remember where you were taken for the
Yes.
programming? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I mean, I know the name and this is really strange because I know the name of the place. I even know the name of the programmer there, everything. I really don't give those names out just because
Yeah.
I don't know, I know people will search for it. So I'm not
Right.
ready for that. But it was a psychiatric hospital on the East Coast. They're no longer open, but they were a very big place. They had their own farms and everything. So they were self-sustaining. So they didn't need a lot of people to visit. So that's a perfect place to do these kind of secret programs
Mm.
and things that they had underground tunnels. It was, it was very huge place. So me and another child were taking there, and they had a very small program. It was kind of like in this back area. And what was really interesting is the main programmer was a psychiatrist, and it was a woman which
Hmm.
you don't really hear that a lot, but she was. And when I first saw her, I swear I saw her walking down the steps and I'd never been around people like that. For the way I grew up, she looked like some kind of ethereal angel coming down. She had on this beautiful white satin pantsuit. She had like silver hair and her hair was pinned up on the sides and she had a smile and everything. So I didn't feel afraid of her at the time. She didn't scare me, but she just was her energy was so I didn't wasn't around I've never was around those types of people. So I just looked at her like she was an angel or something. And it was really weird to experience the things that they were doing. Because in a way, she made me strong, I guess. In a way, she made me strong, but at the same time, she tortured us. But at the same
Oh.
time, but it's so conflicting. Like, see, that's programming when I'm
And
like,
it's
yeah,
programming, and it's programming.
yes, she made
Yeah.
me strong, but then, she tortured. That's programming right there, just so people know. See what I just said? That's still programming. So it means still I have work to do based on that because I can't, say I hate. And, I found out, I think it was last year, I was doing a session. And my father came through and he said, there was someone around me and it was her like spirit. She was like an attachment. She was staying within my energy field. She didn't want to let me go. And she was like stuck to me. And he's like, he even said, you need to get this bitch away from you. She's still here for some reason. And that was really important for me to recognize that I had that, she was lingering around in my space for whatever reason, maybe she, had some tie because of what I can do now. She felt that opening and kind of crossed it through it, but I'm not quite sure. But I ended up getting rid of her. Like, yeah, she's got to go.
Yeah. Do you
But
think she was looking for some kind of liberation and she knew the abilities that you had? Do you
I'm
sense
not quite sure. You know what? And I wish I would have gave her a chance, but we live and learn. Yeah,
the love?
that was
Well,
maybe
so
next time.
when this is interesting, you're right about you don't hear too much about female handlers. I had a Navy handler that I remember in
Mhm.
her like starched up little Navy uniform and her little hat back in the 70s. This was back in Montauk, and I bonded with her almost like she was my mother, and
Yeah.
it was very messed up. So it can be an extra bit of mind fuck when it's a female in a way. That's
Yes.
my experience. I don't know if that makes sense,
Especially
but
if that motherly figure too. And
yeah.
the way she just spoke to us, she would call us her prized pupils and, things like that. So this is why I'm saying why it's confusing. You feel almost like, oh, she looks at me a certain way, but then later on she, tortures me.
And
It's
she
so
will betray
strange.
you every time. She will betray
Every
you.
time, every
Yeah.
time with something, but that's the manipulation, that's the psychological abuse, that's the mental torture that they applied to children in this place. And I was there with another boy, and his name was Jacob. I just called him Jake. And we didn't use our real names there. They kind of take that from you. They strip you of your identity just to start
Mhm.
off. Your name's going to be something different. But what they were doing is really interesting because they were trying to do something the programmer said it was called syncopated dissociation where they're attempting to have me and this child dissociate at the same time based on the particular methods of their torture or trauma-based mind control. They were having us try to do that at the same time. So we were both being, electroshocked at the same time, LSD at the same time, all the different physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental, emotional abuse that they were having. A lot of it was taken, which was really messed up, is a lot of it was taking place in a playroom. They had this specific playroom that looked like a 70s playroom with that, they had that specific type of orange and, a lot of orange coloring back in the 70s. It was really weird. But they had that for us, and a lot of the physical abuse would take place there. They were doing some of the classic thing, making us watch, different images and things like that. But mainly, I remember that they changed the activity every like 15 to 20 minutes. It's almost like a preschool program where they were ringing a bell and changing every time. Real strict behavior modification as they were moving through this process. So, we were experiencing this so much that, they weren't feeding us. They were, giving us, things to drink. You weren't supposed to ask them to go to the bathroom, anything. And you know what? We took to that abuse and that trauma so well. She said we were very successful because we stopped asking for anything. It was almost like we became empty shells,
There's nothing.
empty.
There's no,
No,
you don't you don't feel like I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm tired, I need something. Like it just
we
goes
didn't
away.
even go to the bathroom. We didn't even ask to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Nothing. It
And
was
so
gone.
was this, and God, yeah, my heart hurts talking about this a little bit, but were you and Jake then, I mean, because it sounds a lot like twinning, but
Mhm.
was it anything like that? Were you guys then sent on a mission later, or was it just their
No,
exploration?
we didn't work together.
Okay.
They had us, they were it was something akin to twinning because they wanted us to experience it at the same time because they thought there was a force there that could be
Yeah.
felt if we would do that. And they pushed us more towards like a cult to
Mhm.
start. To start off, we were pushed like to a lot of occult things because they found with the stuff I can do now, they found that in the playroom in some of those sessions because the programmer she was doing a lot of deep hypnosis in her office. And there was even sometimes she had taught us to put our palms up on the chair that we were sitting in. She would put it like an acupuncture needle in the middle of your palm that drew you straight to trance. You were out. We were
Wow.
gone. So the information that I'm even just touching on now and getting, she was able to find, in those sessions she was doing for hypnosis. So she knew who I was and what I was. She knew who Jacob was and what he was, even before, we did. And she knew that. And she ended up sending a referral for me out to somebody else in order to start, kind of like a special sector. We call it special sector. On MDF, we used to call it special sector. So special specter kind of program.
Are you talking about Mars?
Yeah, I worked on I got a promotion after I did a bunch of beta work and I ended up getting hired to work in human resources in the corporate office on Mars. I don't know if you
Oh,
were you on Mars? Do you remember
absolutely, I
under
was.
Gen
Go
yeah.
ahead.
The general I worked under was General Asher. I don't know
Hmm.
if you remember him.
No, I don't think
Yeah.
we were in the same place at the same time, so it might have been.
Were you on the McCreary base?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah,
Um,
we were on McCreary base. It was near the landing dock.
so I just time frame wise, linear wise,
Hmm.
how old were you when you were there on the East Coast with Jacob and all this was happening?
Wasn't very long, like 6 months.
But how old were you? Do you have a
7.
sense? Okay, you were 7.
Yep.
And then um like what were your first assignments? Do you have, because there's a lot that happened between there and then going to Mars. I wonder if we could
Yeah.
get into that a little.
Um, as a child, they had me do a few when I was a child, they had me do a few. I really don't talk about it that much. They had me do some kind of like, how do you say it? Where I would entertain gentlemen,
Mhm.
but not for the purpose solely for entertainment. It was for
Right.
recording. So
Yeah.
wherever I was, I was recording the information and they debriefed just by hypnosis. And I can see now how they could do that because of how advanced my level of hypnosis has gotten, I can see how they could debrief so easy. Just I could
Mhm.
record and they could obtain the information because I'm getting information from other worlds just in my own head. Why couldn't I have gone done that? It would
Right.
be so easy.
Yeah.
It would have been easy for them to do
Mhm.
that. So I
Well,
did that for quite a
it
while.
feels like it's like they create this empty shell through the trauma-based mind control, and then you're just being filled with information that you won't remember in the front personality, but then when you get back to who is ever in command, they just download it like a computer, then they
It's so
have.
easy. Yeah.
Mhm.
People
Okay.
need to realize how easy it would have been for them, even now.
Mhm.
Easy to debrief just to get the information from somebody. And we won't know. I mean, that's great for interrogation. I don't even know what you're talking about if another
Right.
alter recorded it. And so it's an honest thing. I don't know until you go deep within my mind, then you could find it.
Were you, just for a moment, I wanted to ask about the hypnosis thing because
Yeah.
for me, in my experience, regression never worked because I was like, hypnosis was used for me in really bad ways.
Yeah.
And you don't seem to have had because I had so much resistance. But that was not your experience with regression or hypnosis.
No. And I've used, you know what? And I used so many different people because I not only wanted to validate myself, I wanted to validate them and their techniques too, to show that I'm not just doing this, one person isn't guiding me. This is a real, I'm doing it with everybody that tries it. I can do this. And you
Mhm.
know what? Necessarily, I don't need hypnosis to do this, but I feel more comfortable to having
Yeah.
somebody there to witness it. Does that make sense? I want to
Yeah.
witness to what I'm saying. I don't
Yeah.
want it to just be me that I said all this crazy, 6 hours of stuff. Somebody's there witnessing it every time. So I have witnesses to everything I've said, everything they've seen, I've seen. And I think that's great to validate them and validate myself.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe somebody you are maybe trusting a little bit to take you through the journey can be helpful, a little bit, hold space for
Yeah,
you.
it does. Or
Hmm.
kind of, kind of say, hey, because when I'm doing it, I feel so strong. And I am strong when I do it. I'm leaving the limits of the physical body behind. So I'll attempt things that are probably scary to other people. And I might need somebody to say, hey, we might not want to do that right now, or hey, let's, kind of wrap that up because I'll go, go all the way. If I let myself, I will go all the way. I can go into bases,
Hmm.
go into people that are in the bases. So I've just started doing like remote influencing. And people, I understand because it is the dark arts, but I'm doing this to help people, and these people don't care about us. They've, mind controlled us. They've, kidnapped children. So if I see somebody and I might use them to get information, no, I don't feel bad. So just in case somebody wanted to know if I feel bad,
Yeah, well, thank you.
doing remote influencing, no, I
Yeah.
don't. I haven't felt any guilt at all.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Um, a couple of things there. I want to bring us back to the timeline, but
Hmm.
also I have heard you say, and this is my impression as well, that a lot of the people who were handling you were also themselves had gone through
Oh,
some
yes.
control program. And it's like you can't, where do you trace this back to the beginning? They had their own handlers, so to speak. They had their own people that they had to answer to. They had their own programs that they were subjected to. I mean, is that as well your impression and
Yes.
through all this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually entered my own handler's head to see that. He lives kind of like right around Rhode Island. When I went to see him, he was such a jerk too. He was not nice at all. So, and this was really strange. I was traveling there and I wanted this so bad. I wanted this information. I wanted to see him. I wanted to see what they were doing. I got there and it's way nerdier than you would think because, these handlers are just sitting in a computer, sitting in a chair behind a computer with this little headset on. I'm like, this is the guy. And I want to tell everybody, look at these guys. This is not, trying to make it seem like they're all powerful. These are like these guys, they're just guys in the chair. When you hear that term, the guy in the chair, that's these guys. They're doing this. Why are we afraid of this? And so
It
when
feels
I
like you're
crept up,
talking about the little guy in the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain.
yeah, it is
What
kind
is
of. So
that?
it was exactly like, I was like, what? This is not, we shouldn't be afraid of this. So when I went there, I used my ability. I traveled there and I went up to the room where he was sitting and he had his office in his attic. He had a really beautiful house, kind of like that Cape Cod style. And he had this where he was up in his attic. And so I went up there and I walked up behind him and he has an ability because he could feel me. He had this and he was mildly telepathic and he also had some kind of like, psychic intuition thing. He knew I was there. And what was weird is I looked behind me and I noticed that a ghost was there. And I saw the ghost plain as day, and she saw me. So that was my first time that I noticed that I was using the ghost dimension to travel because I'm
Hmm.
using the same space as ghosts. And I was like, whoa, that was really cool. And she was upset because this was his grandmother, and she did not like the way he was treating people, but she couldn't do anything about it. She didn't have that because she was a ghost. She wasn't like me. I'm a human and I'm astral traveling. So we had a different kind of like
Oh,
um
interesting. Wow. The plot
density.
thickens.
I guess density. We had a different type of density or something. So I
Hmm.
came up behind me and I just put my shoulders, like my hands on his shoulders, kind of. I just wanted to feel him kind of and get inside his head a little. And right away he started typing. He knew I was there. He's like, I know what you're trying to do. And he started typing and he said that the asset was presenting with ill intentions and journeying towards memories, which is true because that's what I was doing. I was laying in my bed in a session trying to get all my memories. So he put that, and then he said that measures would need to be taken, and that he was expect for me to expect issues with my spleen and to be experiencing tremors. He said that was the next threat. that he said, and they always say, all I have to do is push a button and this will happen to you. It's not hard. They said, we have machines for all this. He showed me some I got to see some of the machines that they were using, some of their tactics, and he was a total jerk. He didn't feel any way. But when I looked, I saw that he was programmed. He had alters. These people are programmed and they
Mhm.
are like us. That's why we need to stop being afraid of them. They're us too. They're assets themselves, survivors of this. And there are these handler divisions. There's a handler division. And actually, the whole entire aftercare program, the aftercare program is these set of handlers that are assigned to control and monitor us. They are, they use an insurance company as their cover. So we'll never know. There's an insurance company that, covers them, and they even make money like that. They get paid
Wow.
very well. And that's what they tell me. They tell me to F off because we get paid well. We don't care what you say. I got all this money, blah, blah, blah. It's very interesting.
So, and this man, just to clarify,
Hmm.
was he like your handler in current time as you were going to view?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
him. That's the
Yeah.
rem
Okay.
they're remote handlers.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
don't get up, they don't have to get up. They use a computer.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
guys, we're getting controlled by a computer.
Mm.
This is a laptop.
Like,
We're being
wow. And
controlled by
so
a
is that
laptop.
interfacing? Do you have a sense of that interfacing with an intermediary satellite technology or something, or do you know, or how that's?
I don't know exactly how well, they told me it's everywhere. It's your entire house has things that they monitor us with. You can't escape it. And I believe them. I believe that. I believe like, yeah, you're right. We probably can't escape it with all the technology we have. And they threaten you. You can't escape it. What are you doing? What are you trying to do? Blah, blah, blah. Stop talking or you're gonna, pretty much they threaten you every time. If you don't stop this, this is gonna happen to you if you don't stop this. They really don't want us to talk about this.
Yeah. Well,
That's one
thank
of
you
their
for
main
thank you for
things.
sharing. So we're going back to the
Yes.
age. Well, you're finishing up with the mind control programming. If
Yeah.
you learn these things at age 7, then you're used in beta programming. Was that, do you have a sense of how long that was or gathering intel?
I think it was a couple years. And you know what? Like they would use me for a few years and then left me alone. They used me because I looked, sounds weird, but even when I was a teenager, I looked way younger than I was. So
Oh.
they couldn't particularly use me for some of the adult programs that they wanted to, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
There were things that they wanted me to do that I didn't have the physicality for quite yet. So they kind of slowed that down. They actually did training on the moon when I was 13. They took
Mhm.
me for some training. So
And that was that a, do I remember right, maybe call that some kind of psionics lab? Is that right?
yeah, it was Sinai training. So I even know the my teacher's name. I even knew my teacher's name, everything. It was
And
just I was
was
getting
this
so
was this a human on the moon? Human teacher
oh
or
yeah. Oh yeah. All
okay.
humans. All humans. So I this was and this always freaks people out when I say I took a train there. That's all I remember. And I can't give a lot of detail because I was, a kid, 13. There was a man that was my chaperone, an older man, and he had like a nice suit, he wore a hat and everything. And I didn't feel afraid with him, but I went with him and he took me on a train. And that's where we ended up on level 4 underground on the moon for this
Hmm.
psionics training.
Hmm.
And I honestly do not know how I can't give people the specs on how, that travel worked. I just don't know. I was only 13, so I can't give you
Fair
that.
enough. So
Sorry.
much of it is going on in a sort of quantum way, or
Yeah.
we're taken down into a dome, and then suddenly, like for me, when I was taken to the moon, it was like going to a sort of substation underground on Earth, and then we would be, underground on the moon. So, might as well be a train. In my case, it wasn't. It was a ship,
Yeah.
but it can be
And
hard to dial that in. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It is hard to figure out sometimes, so and this was in the 80s. I went to the moon
Okay.
in the 80s.
Okay.
So that just for time framing, the
Yeah.
80s.
Thank you.
And yeah, and when I first kind of like got this information when I was looking at it, I do this thing where I kind of look around because I want to be able to validate the memory and remember it. So I looked around the room in my spirit body, and I saw on the wall in the psionics classroom, and there was a poster there, and it said that General Land was retiring after 20 years of service, and they were having a banquet for him. I don't know why I remember that. I just remember seeing it, and now I can't forget it now because, and I'm glad I don't forget it because that's an important, it ties me to that memory of seeing just a poster on a wall. And
Hmm.
so this classroom looked very, it looked kind of dark. It looked like kind of like a dated college room or something. There was no windows, obviously. It was just all cement, painted cement. And there was all adults in this classroom. And, the teacher didn't particularly want to work with a child. But because in my file, there's a special thing that calls special sector. That was in my file. So they had to work with me. There was something, special about me that there was no choice. She had to work with me. And the teacher, she was very strict and I don't know, I don't know the word of it, aggressive. And, I almost felt like a little bit afraid of her, but
Hmm.
she was so harsh with me and, assertive and, but I know now why she was doing it. And I appreciate it now because she was trying to keep me alive. And I always remember this phrase she always said, you have to be so quick. It takes one look and one word. You have to know what everybody in the room is thinking, who they are, if there's a threat, anything. You can't wait because you're going to be in situations where you don't have time to think. It's just you immediately know. So she was training me for personality profiling and it had to be fast. So it's weird to see that now, even in my life now, like seeing that lingering, situation of having that personality profile. Because people don't know how much freedom they have when you don't know why you're doing things constantly. You don't know that every thought you have is premeditated. If you really had that ability and you could see yourself premeditating a behavior or a thought, your own thought, I saw it and I'm like, I hated it because I don't have that freedom now of other people. They just can live a normal life and not worry about the things in their head. Now I know when, if I'm meeting somebody and they're doing a certain behavior, I'm seeing all the steps of why they're doing it and when they're doing, and I'm like, oh God, I
That
hate
feels
it.
like too much
I hate it.
information sometimes. Like I
Yeah. I'm like,
all too
I don't,
much.
I don't
Yeah.
want this. I want to be normal. I was like, I want to be normal. I don't want to know why people are doing everything they do and why they made this step, why they said this thing. It's
Hmm.
ridiculous. So
So
if there
even
was
though
one ability I wanted to get rid of, it would be that one.
okay, so it sounds like you still have some abilities that you were trained in, even though you're not,
Yeah.
would you say you're still in these programs or not?
No, to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But I do want to say though, since I worked on Mars and the human resources, I know specifically that that were in MDF, there's a stack of forms you sign, everyone signed. I know because I made them sign it. I was the person that had to get the signatures that you're signing to be used in this life and the next. You're also signing to be controlled and monitored for the rest of your life when you retire.
Mm.
Sorry, that's just, I hate to tell people that, but that's just what was in the forms and you all signed it. And you know what? Nobody even really read this form. They knew they had to sign it because there's no questions there. You're not allowed to ask a question or say no, thank you. That's
No,
not a
you're not
that's not a
allowed to question
choice.
anything, right? So,
No, that's not a choice
um,
there. So nobody questioned me. They said yes. They signed the forms. They left. They don't even know what's in them. They
mhm.
literally, and you know what? These forms, from what I know, can hold up in any court. And they said that even they hold up in galactic courts. They hold up in Earth, off-planet galactic courts because we gave the consent, which I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm just saying
Mhm.
that's what they told me. I don't know if that's the truth. And obviously I don't, believe everything handlers say. That's not the point of it. The point is that there are these documents,
Yeah,
that are
well,
saying,
sounds like that was your position during that time when you were there. That's what you were doing. So, and you call this personality profiling. Is that right?
yes,
And so,
it's personality for we call it that, but much more than that. It's almost like reading an entire individual that it's almost like reading between the lines almost like I read you right now with your eye. That's a read. All you have to do is look at somebody's eye. One smile, that's a read. One
yeah.
twitch, that's a read. One any shake, that's a read. Any finger hand up, that's a read. Isn't that crazy? Like everything is read on a person. It's so interesting that they do that for personality profiling. But
And
yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
well, and so what would be, were you routing new arrivals into certain,
Yes. So
okay.
I was under so I had done a lot of I get into that, but I had done a lot of beta work and I got a promotion because they said for a job done well. And that was around when I was 29 and they sent me to Mars for the rest of my term of service. Even though I had gone back and forth a few times, but my lengthy terms of service was right around age 29 and I stayed there till around I was like maybe 39. But during that time, I was working for Mars Defense Force, and I was under ground battalion, the ground force battalion, but actually my division was Mariner, and I was in the corporate sector. Like I said, I worked for under General Asher, but they had me doing human resources work with incoming recruits. So these people would come in, and back in the day, they would, they did my lab people. They forced everybody. But now in the modern times, there's a lot of volunteers. People are thinking, volunteers are coming straight from the military, and they're being told they're gonna, these amazing, they see these movies and they think it's gonna be like the movies. And then when they get there, they come to my office, and I'm putting them in a job in like the waste treatment or water treatment center and things like that. There were so many different divisions. They had mining, they had like I said, water treatment, waste treatment, agriculture. They even had an entertainment division. So,
Yeah,
anything to
and
make the base run. Anything to make the
yeah, you
base
bring up an important point because a lot of people think it's like when you go to Mars, you just be like I became a super soldier. I was weaponized out there with
run.
my twin. And it's not all that. There's people doing like ordinary human function, right? Like
And you
as a
know what? I didn't interact a lot with super soldiers, and I don't know if you remembered being a lot around the normal, recruits because they usually kept them separate. And from what I knew, super soldiers were considered special sector, so you wouldn't have interacted a lot with the incoming recruits. In my experience, anyway. I don't know if you remember that.
yeah, I didn't re interact much with anybody in like an
Yeah.
office like position. And
No.
were you profiling were the arrivals adults,
Yes.
children, or both?
All adults. They
Okay.
came in, they would spend about an hour with me. I would do my various assessments and evaluations, which pretty much is getting them to talk and be themselves, just so I can read their personality and their mannerisms. And I'm not saying I have validated this in any way, but I'm assuming that I was using psychic ability too. It probably was more than just a
Yes,
psychological training.
I think so. You know,
Yeah, I think I
they
was
don't
using
waste resources in the programs when
no.
you're in them. They know what your gift is and they're going to use it. They're going to max it out. So,
Yeah, so I'm thinking that, oh, I'm so great at personality printing. I'm thinking I'm probably using part of my psychic ability for this. I probably wasn't just,
yeah, they're not
the
going to
person I
waste
call.
that.
Yeah,
So,
so
and these were not my lab. They weren't abductees. They were people who showed up of their own accord. Just so I understand, is
it's a
that
mixture, a mixture,
okay?
a mixture
Okay.
of people. Because some people did come in my office and I could, because you have to be able to sense if they have an ability, they need to be referred to special sector. I can't keep them there because we need them in other areas. We can't just use them for, the water treatment if they have some
Yeah.
type of ability. Somehow, see, I'm just saying that because then how did I know that somebody had an ability? It must have been, I don't know if I can just get that from personality profiling. I probably was
Yeah.
using a
Yeah,
psychic
no,
ability
you
for it.
had other skills that they were employing in
Yeah.
a sense. So and no ET contact. Yeah, like you're saying to me, like you didn't really see office folks, and I'm saying to you, like, did you see any extraterrestrial stuff
I
going on?
saw them on the medical satellite station I worked at. They were on
Okay.
there,
Mm.
but they were on the satellite station, but that it was because I got demoted, so I ended up having to work at a satellite station because
Did you get in
this
trouble?
was
What happened?
well, I kind of had a major programming breakdown. So I
Uh-oh.
would start something was wrong with me. Just like in this, that's it coincided. And around this, whatever was going on there, the same thing happened to me here on Earth when I had a job and I was starting to panic and have anxiety. The same thing happened on Mars. I was
Mark.
having anxiety, I was having panic attacks. Something was bleeding through me. And if I can remember now, I guess it would be something akin to major depression, but we didn't have a word for it on Mars. There was no such thing as depression there. So I didn't know what was wrong with me. I knew my programming was breaking down. I was having bleed through memories, experiences. I found I was even I went to my boss's office once and was looking through his papers, the general. Why would I do that? Because I could get in so much trouble. But I knew something was there and I just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So I started to not be as good at my job, the way I
Mhm.
used to be.
Yeah.
And they usually kept me isolated because that was the best way to preserve my ability and make sure it wasn't getting muddled with other people's energies and things like that. But I didn't do well anymore. So they let me go to that and they demoted me and I ended up having to do like this work where with incoming ships just like signing off on stuff. And then I ended up going to the medical satellite station where I was something like a medical social worker. So, they feel like because there wasn't all humans doing these surgeries and medical, you know, procedures, they felt like it would make people more comfortable if they saw a human come in and ask for the signature because they had to consent to it.
Yeah.
Whether people know it or not, they take consent very seriously out there. As the faction I worked for anyway, they took consent very seriously because they like to cover their own asses. And to have consent saying though they wanted this and they signed for it,
Mhm.
they still have those signatures too. From a lot of us that were there, they have all this. They use a off base kind of like subcontracted human resources where they keep all the files there and they monitor
Mhm.
the files there. I actually went in there and saw it. But so I was working on the station and I would go into the place and, go into the room of the person and have them sign the thing. And they actually were they were more comfortable having me ask them for signatures than if an ET came in, and they knew they couldn't say no. It was like augments and different chemical processes and
Did
things
you
like that.
did your did your human self ever kind of go, "Whoa, what am I doing?" Like, did you have any issues with like your conscience in the job
Yes.
that you were
That's why I got demoted. Yeah. Because I didn't, everybody hated me. And I felt like that. I felt like everybody hated me because I was, like working for the man or whatever, because it
Mhm.
was part of my job. Like when somebody came into the office, I was supposed to, it was my job to somehow detect if they would be somebody that would not flow with the status quo of our base and our
Yeah.
general. And I had to be able to detect that. And if I did detect it, I'd have to note that this person somehow was going to rebel because that's not allowed. So, people didn't like me because of that. I was almost like a traitor. So there were, nobody would talk to me, nobody hung around me, nobody, even really looked my way. I felt like an invisible person. Like I said, I felt like I had depression and I was so sad and like I just didn't know what was wrong with me. So it
Wow.
was really, and plus that isn't for women. That for
No.
me, I know you had a different experience, but when I was on the base, even though I know I could do things, because I have done things in the past that were either very physical or stuff that nobody would think that somebody like me could do. I know that I could do that kind of stuff. But here I was kind of like trapped in this identity of being this, professional woman. And, you know, a lot of these higher ups, they're sociopaths, psychopaths, because they're very well sought after because they're the ones that are able to make the hard decisions. So some of us women are living amongst these sociopaths, psychopaths, men, and I just felt like, I didn't feel safe. And, you'd get attacked. I get attacked in the hall sometime or, and I felt like, I know I could hurt them, but I felt like that restraint that you can't do this. You're not allowed to do this. You can't fight back or something like
Well,
that.
you probably
I
had
felt very well
programming.
patriarchal. Yeah, I
You have
felt
to
very
say you had
stuck in a
programming in
patriarchal.
that direction to keep you kind of more
Hmm.
docile and complacent given the situation.
And
Um,
which, we weren't really programmed like that at the beginning. We were programmed for strength and for, they used a lot of my past lives and my anger against men to, build that up in me to make sure I was a good beta work. I was good at that. I used to call it beta tracking. I called it beta tracking because I was good at it because I had anger and hatred for men because of my past lives. They utilized that. They made sure that I remembered that and that was stuck inside me just in case. But when I was on Mars, I didn't have that. I didn't feel strong enough. I felt like I had to play this role for them. And so it didn't go well. But once I retired, I retired after at age 39 from there and went back to my normal life. And that was more of like a chemical process. I know some people say this. From what I saw, it was chemicals, and then they were able to re-age me and send me back to my crappy life. So,
you mean on Earth? You for leaving
yes,
at age 39 from Mars. So you spent maybe 10 years on Mars. Is that how you, is that?
about fully,
Mhm.
when I was living there, probably 10 years, because I went at 19. I did a bunch of, different jobs up until 29 when I got my promotion, and then stayed till 39. So it was really strange to have like a kind of, I don't know, disjointed,
Yeah.
term of service when everybody's saying I was there. But they needed me in so many different places. And actually, right before I left, they coded me for reentry. That means they could come get me and use me. I gave them permission to use me at any time. If I'm in the right area, they can come and get me.
I mean, after
And a
you were,
lot of people, Yes,
After.
a lot of people did that. A lot of people signed for that because if they said we're going to need you in the future, you have to sign for it.
Mm-hmm. Um, and are you, do you, I mean, do you feel like you're ever being taken out to Mars now?
The last time I remember being taken, I was in my mid 30s, and
Oh,
it was so I was laying in my bed, and I remember this. It's very detailed because I remember it, and it was starting to get dark out, and I'm getting kind of drowsy or whatever, and I it was like summer, so I had shorts on or something. And I remember falling asleep, and then I wake up and my eyes snapped open, and it's almost like instantaneous. I just knew what I had to do. I knew it. And I was really pissed off because I didn't feel like I was in the prepared properly. I had no shoes on, no weapons, nothing.
oh,
They left me in a basement. I had on it looked like I had on basketball, like a kid's clothes, like basketball shorts and a tank top. With no shoes, no weapons, no nothing. And I knew what I had to do. I had to get these two kids out of this house. We had to leave. And it was this huge house. And these kids didn't speak English. They didn't have any, they only had shorts on too, no shoes or anything. They were in these little cages. I got these two kids out and we were going through this massive house. And I'm looking through, I must have been in the wrong wing because I was looking through all the rooms, trying to look for a weapon, anything. That's your first step. I got to find something, you know, to hold just in case, somebody's there. I need a weapon. I didn't have anything. And that I don't know why they send us with unpreparedness. I didn't even know if I had my altars. I don't know. I just knew what I
mhm.
had to do. So I ended up finally finding something in this. It looked like there was this man's, whoever owned the house, it was his office or something. And I went through one of the drawers and I found this little knife that had all these different attachments in it. It looked like it had been a retirement gift because I had like retirement,
Mhm.
so and so retired, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. So it must have been, he was very wealthy. And so we finally went through this place was so huge, they had a basketball court in there. So I finally got my hand on a garage door and this is when we could finally get out of the place. And as soon as I opened the door, there was this woman there, and she was like very tall, like probably like 6 foot tall. And she was dressed almost, this is so strange. I think she might have been like mind control because she was almost dressed like she was in the 50s. Like she didn't know what time period it was. She was dressed like she thought that was the way to look, and the memory is so detailed. I can remember seeing like the powder and foundation in the cracks of her face.
Her face.
That's how detailed the memory is. Like I remember what it looked like, the makeup settling in her face. And women know what that looks like, when you have that makeup settle in your face. So I'm like, and when she saw us open the door, she immediately dropped her groceries and she went for her phone. And I just put the knife to her throat and she dropped it. She knew. She's like, take it. She pretty much didn't fight it or anything. She just said, take it. And I took the keys to her car. She had a black SUV, drove it, and all I know is I took it to, we called it the mark. I got to the mark in the right place, and I don't know what happened after then. And then I just remember being back in my bed, in which I didn't fall asleep on my bed there. I fell asleep on the couch, but when I got home, I was back in the bed in different clothes too. It was really strange.
That's really strange. So do you feel like were the kids with you when you took off in the SUV?
Yes, I got them to where they needed. That was my job to get them out. And I don't know what they, why, what. I wasn't allowed to ask a question of where they're going and are they going to be. I'm not allowed to ask that. You do your
Right?
job,
Like,
you
am
do
I
your
helping the
mission.
kids? Am I harming the kids? Like, what's
You don't
happening?
know.
Hmm.
So I wasn't allowed to ask a question. So I really don't know what happened to them. It could be have helped, but who knows based on the agencies that we were forced to work for,
Hmm.
especially because that was Kruger. And they usually don't have, I don't trust them at all. I don't have any happy feelings working for them. Let's just say
Yeah,
that they don't
yeah.
treat their female assets well. So, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, probably not all good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, it's a lot to know. I mean, so this has spanned like so much of your life and it must have been, I mean, you've written a book, two books now, is that right?
Two
Gray Mouse,
books. Yeah.
Sex, Space,
Hmm.
and Mind Control, and Gray Mouse Part Two, Purgatory. Am I right on that?
Yeah, and I'm working on the third one. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you've been productive with all of this and really going places. So,
Yeah,
anything
I'm trying to
else?
get a lot of it out on TikTok too.
Are you? Okay. Okay. Well, link all of that below.
Yeah, because a lot of
Yeah.
yeah, not everybody is interested in reading, so I wanted to have a different type of media that they could absorb the information. So I make these almost like mini movies with a lot of the information from the books so they can just watch it instead if they don't want to read it, they can watch the little clips and,
Oh,
get a lot of the information that
for
way.
short
Like
attention span
to have
people.
different types of media for people.
Yeah. Was the
Yeah, so they can,
and
check it out that way.
Yeah, we'll link all that below for you. And I'm wondering with the, I still, I'm like mulling over the thing with the kids in the garage door. And was that wasn't connected to Mars at all, was it? Or
Hmm.
it was?
Not that I remember. It was in Seattle.
Okay.
It was in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
All right. So, and I always
So
feel,
that was the time I remember being taken and that I wasn't in the programs anymore. I had
okay,
been released
yeah,
from the programs. But
yeah.
I was coded for reentry. So they
Mhm.
had permission and they said, they told me it depends on the area and your availability. They actually think about that. Did you? I would never expect that they would
Are you
consider that.
available?
I thought,
Right.
yes, they do. They think about that. They even said we have to determine who's available and who's, in the vicinity you're at. Is somebody there to pick you up? I didn't even think they thought like that. That was so
Right.
strange for me to see. But yeah, we
So,
have to make sure you're available. I'm like, okay.
well, thank you for that. Yeah, there's so many. I was gonna say like I feel like the more I've dug into my own story over the years, it's like I still have so many questions. I mean, do you find
Oh,
yourself
yes, all
like
the
that
time.
also
It's going to
like,
be
oh,
a life. I'm probably going to do this until I die
right, it's
because this
forever.
is
It's forever. Yeah.
I can't, there's so much to know and so much for people to know that I don't see any stopping it. Like, why would I stop now?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't say that, oh, I got enough and that's enough. It's never enough. Especially
Well,
when I
it's
first decided to do it, I said, there's something in me that I need the truth and I want people to know the truth. There's something in me that just said that. And, I haven't been able to stop that. And plus, my dad, when we first had a really emotional session, after his passing or whatever, we had this
mm,
emotional session when I was under trance. And he literally told me, he said, you burn this. He told me, he gave me a very stern voice and he said, burn the system down. He said, burn it all down. He said,
mm,
go out there and tell everybody what they did and what they made us do. And, I stay true to that because that's my father telling me my mission is to tell people about what has happened. Why wouldn't I? If somebody else's dead father said that, it'd be a huge thing to their heart. Like my father told me to go and tell everybody what they did to us.
yeah. I'm gonna cry because it's so redolent of my own experience with my dad.
Yeah, I get emotional every time I talk about him, like in the fact that, I couldn't rely on him when he was alive, but now he's like a guide to me. And he's given me so much just in the realm he's from. It's crazy that you can rely on somebody that's not even alive anymore.
So in a way, I mean, he's become a little bit of a an ally in a sort of backhand way, we could say.
Yeah, he has now. And I wouldn't want anything to change, even though I know the stuff that he did and that he was the one that caused me to be in this situation. But now that I see it, I'm like, the information that we have that we're all getting to people, this can change the world.
It
It
can.
really is. He even said it. He even told me, he said, this situation is very serious, but he said, you will not lose. There is no other option except for you all to win in this.
Mm.
So when I hear that, I'm like, it's so important for people to know why are we giving up? Why are we fighting? Why are we, you arguing with each other? It's like he can see it. He's like, it's such a huge universal shift. It's so important. It's so big. Everybody's been waiting for it. They say the heavens are watching, and it's amazing.
I love that. I mean, it's really beautiful when we think about all the darkness that there's this light pouring in with you and your dad. Just love that. So
Yeah,
also,
especially the way we were. Yeah,
oh, I was going to say, you had over 100 altars. Is that right? That you discovered?
118,
118,
118
the
so far.
exact number. So
Yep.
I'm just thinking as we're starting to wind down a little bit here, like what do you tell people? There's different ways that people go about integrating altars, and it sounds like you were able to, the beginning you
Yes.
spoke to asking them to go into retirement. Was there any secret sauce to that? Because a lot of people struggle to
Yes.
integrate.
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I stopped being afraid of them and I let them speak. They need to have their voices heard. We
Yes.
can't push them to the side and say, you don't deserve to have, because it's you. Whether we think of it or not, it is part of us still. It is still me that done this stuff. It's me. And I
Yeah.
can't just let silence them. That was holding me back is trying to silence them and being afraid that they're taking over me. They're trying to control. That's what was holding me back. When I let them speak and tell their story about what happened to them,
Yeah.
They saw that I needed that, but then they also saw that I needed them to go to sleep. If we're afraid of them and to do, it's always gonna, it's always gonna linger there. But they trusted me, I trusted them, and we made the decision together for them to go to sleep. And
Yeah.
once in a while, someone will kind of push through. But you know what? I've learned it's because there's a threat.
Mhm.
They come when there's a threat. We don't know that. We didn't know that. A threat, if there's something around that's going to happen, that one of them will come through. And I could see it, and they'll try to come through my subconscious and somehow and show themselves to me like, hey,
Mhm.
there's something wrong. You got to snap out of it. Wake up, kind of. It's almost like they're saying, wake up, there's something wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah, so they
So
become kind of
a lot of us, I
protectors,
even,
maybe. Protectors.
yeah, I almost think that they kind of program us to be afraid of them. I
Yeah.
feel like it's part of programming to be afraid of these parts of us, parts of ourselves that we're ter like I said, I was afraid my whole life of this particular altar. And she, I get it. She's scary. She is what darkness is because she was created in a playroom where things were being done to children that sh children should never see. So she became, that dark side to protect herself. She became that darkness to protect herself, protect me. And she embodies that still. And these things, these altars are so strong and complex, you have no idea. These things can create worlds inside you because I traveled to where she created a world for herself. And this particular altar is called Ariel. She created a world. I seen it, and it looked like exactly what a little kid would think a scary place would look like, a dark forest with a little cemetery near it, almost like you would see in a kid's scary book. Because that's what the context, some of, I had as a
Yeah.
child, and this thing made this her home. She has this thing that she keeps with her in the forest. It's like this giant Wendigo thing. And that's where she lives. And she has this like white nightgown on. Her face is like her hair is covering her face. She looks very dirty. And she's almost like feral, like she has lost her humanity. But that's because she's a survival altar. If he has to take me over, that means not circumstances. Like if it's ultimate survival, you want your survival altar to take over because you will survive, nothing else will.
Yeah. 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 We were programmed to dissociate and above all, I think, to survive so the missions could be successful.
Always,
Ooh.
there's for that, nothing is more important than the mission. Don't you remember that? Yeah, they remember that telling us
Mhm.
the mission is the utmost importance. Nothing else trumps that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was always true on Mars as a super soldier. 1,000%. And that's why they twinned us. So we'd have something we cared about to come through alive on the other side. Quoting you, Olivia, on this, which was so beautiful from,
Yeah.
again, a talk that you had with Rob, your mind is so powerful. What you can do with your mind is more than I ever thought I could do. I love that.
Yes, and it's true. I would have never guessed. I thought I was just a girl.
Mhm.
I hate to, that's so weird to say. I thought I was just a girl until I experienced and saw for myself what I was. And it's so, I would have never thought that, deep inside me, I'm actually a jinn or I'm actually a dark entity because I consider myself a good person. And that was part of the duality part of it when I saw myself as this thing. But
Yeah.
then they saw it too, and they saw how powerful that force is and what it was, in its darkness. But this is so interesting. I've been talking about this lately because when so this thing is called Harlowen that I am. It's called Harlowen. And back when she was alive in the ancient times and she lived like that for a really long time, and she chose that role. She would stalk her prey. She would try to infiltrate their lives and she would begin her process of oppression because eventually her goal was to have this person let them, she wanted to take this person over and they would let her, after a while, but it's because, she knew she was, breaking them down and, scaring them and doing everything just so she had the chance to take them over and destroy their lives and make them either hurt themselves or other people. It was that strength and power. But you know what? I thought it was so strange when I was speaking to her. She said, because I could speak to my own past lives. She said that she's like, she didn't even know she was evil. She didn't have a word for evil because she came into this life in this role to do this specific job. And she said, I didn't know I'm not harming anybody. This is what they want. They're calling me. She said that they call the darkness to them and she comes. She said, I come to them and I look like a monster. That's what they want. And in a way, she's right because people do call this. They call it today. It's the beckoning. They still do this process.
Mm.
People are still reaching out to entities for various reasons. So she's not wrong about that. They did call, and she said they called me. And in some instances, she was very aggressive with it. So they would just, ultimately just give up, if that makes sense. They would give up and let her take over. And
Mm.
it's almost like a possession. And
And
what I
this is
think is strange is that,
um, I just wanted to clarify for the audience, this is a past life that you're
yeah.
speaking of that you, okay, thank you.
Yes, it was a past life. I had a past life as what we would consider a dark jinn, but a lot of
Mhm.
people call them dark entities or daemons. That's the old word we would say daemon. And like I said, she lived like that for a long time, but she didn't want to, a lot of these darker entities, they don't like to be physical because if you're what in their minds, they consider themselves gods. That's just the truth of it. I'm not saying I'm a god. I'm just saying these dark entities think of themselves
Well,
as
they
gods
are connected
because,
to a lot of powerful forces that have been around a long time. So yeah.
yeah, and they've been showered and revered and worshipped for thousands of years. So in their minds, that's how they've come up with the idea that, oh, I'm a god, kind of thing. So Harlow, this Jinn, thought of herself as a trickster god. And what is weird, like I said, they didn't want to present themselves physically because they didn't like the reaction they got from people when they were real physical because they want to be revered. And when you come to somebody in your physical form, these people are disgusted, they're terrified. That's not how you treat a god, supposedly. That's what these entities say. So Harlequin didn't like to travel like that. She traveled like red energy. And actually these things travel in the blood. So I traveled in the blood. It's like a virus. So that's interesting to think of, entities traveling as viruses. So that's
Oh
how
yeah,
I would get
that's
into
like this
people
is
is in
like
the
we're going into
bloodstream.
a whole another layer of
Yeah.
high strange there. Oh my goodness. So much here,
Yeah,
Olivia.
it's a virus. It's
Mm.
viral, yeah. So I was
Wow.
viral in a way, and that was my easiest way to jump back and forth to people and, pretty much eat them. That's how I fed on them. But like I said, when I talked to her though, she didn't know she was evil. She said I didn't even know I don't know what evil is. Like, what does that mean? Kind of like I'm evil? Like she didn't even know it. She's like, and so that's really like a strange line, fine line for duality. If somebody doesn't even know they're evil and they're doing these things, like who's going to tell a dark entity from, thousands of years ago, you're evil? It's so strange. It was such a weird thing to understand and see her speaking like matter of factly about it. Like, oh, I didn't even know I was evil.
Big, big, big lessons here in that great duality theater. And as we move more,
Hmm.
in my view, I mean, moving more toward unity consciousness, as we process all these things from other iterations of our lives and the soul's experience and like the big cosmic play. Wow. Thank you for coming and joining us today. There's so much
Yeah,
here.
thank
I'd
you for
love
having
to
me.
we'll keep talking if we can and bring you back on because there's a lot
Yeah.
to keep
Oh,
excavating.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I have so much information, tons. If anybody is interested, I'd love to be back.
Yeah, definitely. So I will put your TikTok and your book links below and anything else. We'll have that for Olivia and for myself. If you're looking for one-on-one support, soul counsel sessions, quantum healing, astral journeys, inner child integration, and lots more, you can check out the links below. Yeah, that's for one-on-one support. I'm also starting my January 16th. I start another 10-week live course called the Awaken the Deepening. And that'll probably be, I don't know, if you want a group experience of teachings with me and lots of meditation-based experiences, channel journeying, check it out. I'll link that below. So once again, Olivia James, I'm really honored to have you. And
Yeah,
we'll see.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. just to mention this briefly, I have a mother and father from a previous lifetime, Indigenous mother and father, and I just call them simply mother and father. They've been with me every day for about 2.5 years. They were my parents from a previous lifetime with the Crow people. And they've helped me heal so much. They've done soul retrieval work for me. They helped me journey to get parts back. And that's actually ongoing. Like even today, I was working with them this morning. And their love is so beautifully unconditional.